for like the housing and human services or whatever, you have to be 35 to take that position?
I am not sure in the presidential succession list how much you have to meet the presidential qualifications, because there are a few that have not been natural-born citizens from my understanding, so therefore they would never be selected as a designated survivor. That is my understanding of that, but I don't have anything to verify that. Yep.
What do you mean designated survivors? So they're trying to keep them safe?
So they take them away to a bunker that is undisclosed, and in the TV clip I showed you is probably not realistic. I don't think they have window access to the Capitol. I think that it's an underground bunker somewhere. We don't know exactly where they take them.
So, if there's like a threat,
It's when we have a government meeting where a lot of people are in the same place. So in the event that an explosion happens, everybody gets killed off, there's one person that will automatically assume the presidency.
so that person knows.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a different person every time we have one of those meetings. So I should tell you, when we get to January, maybe early February, whenever President Trump schedules his State of the Union address, we'll talk about that.
Let's see if he's not.
And that's what I usually do. And that often trends on Twitter is who's the designated survivor. And you can find out pretty quickly which of the secretaries has been whisked away to a bunker somewhere.
How tight is it?
Libby.
So is this person the designated survivor for the whole presidential term, or just for like that one meeting?
For that night, for that one meeting, they will change the designated survivor all the time.
There's probably someone in DC, or like, so they hide them in DC.
Yes. Well, or they fly them out earlier in the day. They fly them somewhere else, take them away.
Do you know you're the designated survivor?
They would tell you that day. Yeah, they probably don't tell you far ahead of time because they don't want you blabbing to somebody else. Any of that.
He was there, like,
So you probably also wouldn't have your phone in that case, right? Because those can be tracked.
You might. It's not a secret who the designated survivor is once the meeting starts. But location, the government phones, I think, have a different way. I'm not sure, but I think they all have government-issued phones. This was a big controversy when Obama took over as president because they made him give up his cell phone. And he refused. He's like, you can't make me. And it was like months into his presidency, he still had his BlackBerry, and he was so tied to that that he said, I don't want to give this thing up. The Secret Service eventually forced him to. They gave him a government cell phone. I think it was an iPhone. But that was something that he argued with them over for quite a while. So when you talk about election next, this is where we're going to get into some deeper issues that I need you to make sure that you follow along with me really well. So when the Constitution was originally written and drafted, there were some debates over how we should elect the president. There were some who believed that the individual American voter would not be educated enough to be able to select such a high position in government. They already struggled with selecting senators. And if you remember back when we talked about the beginnings of the Constitution, senators were not even selected by the American people. It's not until Amendment number 17. So a lot of them thought, why should we give people the ability to vote for the president, the executive? Instead, we should let Congress select. So that was one of the ideas thrown out there, and there were others who said, no, we need to let the people be involved in that. And so they argued for direct election by the people. And the argument against this, they said once again, well, but what if you have people that have no idea what they're doing or don't know who these candidates are, and they just vote and we put a bad person in office? So we shouldn't have a straight vote by the population. We need to have a compromise here. And that's what the Constitution was all about. It was all about constitutional compromises. And so we get that here with our representative election. So a representative election works like this. The state picks the representative. And the representatives are called electors. So these electors are equal to the number of members you have in Congress. Are you coming from the rehearsal?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So anybody know how many representatives Indiana has in the House of Representatives? In the House of Representatives. Maybe I should start with an easier question. How many members does Indiana have in the Senate?
1, 2.
2, because everybody gets 2. That's a trick question. So everybody gets 2. Now, in the Senate, representation is equal. In the House, it's based on your population. So we have 9. Yeah, Gianna got that. It's 9 where you have 9 members. Thank you for affirming that. We have 9 members in the House. So total, we put those two together, we have a total of 11 members in Congress. So we get 11 electors. Okay? So these electors are the ones who are actually going to cast the ballot for president. You're like, wait a second, I thought in 2020, next year, I get to vote for president. Technically, no. Technically, you're voting for electors next November. So the electors would cast 2 votes for president. Now, let me try to illustrate this up here on the board. Would you turn that light on for me, Aaron? Oh, I actually had a plan. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so let's say here, we're going to go back to 2016. Okay? In the vote, people had the choice between Trump and Clinton. Okay? In the general election, you go to the polls and you go vote. You guys need to follow this because this is super important to your understanding electoral college here. So you go vote and you decide you're going to vote for the state of Indiana primarily voted for Trump. So we're going to go that direction. You voted for Trump on the ballot. You're like, yes, I have now cast my vote for president. No, you haven't. Not yet. Your vote actually goes to the electors. Now, none of us know who the electors are. You could certainly look them up if you want to know. But electors are chosen, and in your notes, when I have electors in there, I need you to write down a couple things here about electors. There are electors chosen by each party. So the Democratic Party, they've got 11 electors. Democratic Party has 11 electors ready to go as soon as the election's over. Republicans have their own 11 electors, pre-selected, ready to go as soon as the election's over. They are just kind of waiting to find out who you vote for here. So those 11 electors can be anybody the party chooses. So if you're a Republican in charge of the Republican Party, who are you going to make sure you choose those 11? What type of people are you going to make sure those 11 are? Somebody's going to remain true and loyal to the Republican Party. You're not going to select somebody that is an independent because this is a huge responsibility. So it can be somebody like you or me. They could pick the governor. They could pick a senator. They could pick a NBA player, an NFL player. It doesn't matter. They can pick anybody they want to, but they're going to make sure that that person is loyal to the party. So once again, we look up here at the board. There are 11 Republican electors kind of waiting off in the wings, getting ready to go. 11 Democrats getting ready to go. Election day is over. At the end of the election day, we find out in Indiana, Trump got more popular votes than Clinton. So therefore, the people, the 11 electors in the Democratic Party are disappointed. They have to go home. They get to do nothing more after this. Because the people of Indiana have said, we cast our vote more for the Republican people than we did for the Democratic people. So the Republican electors, they get a trip.
Free?
No, not free. Well, they go to Indianapolis. They go to the state capitol. But these 11 electors are going to go to the Capitol building, and they're going to vote for who they're supposed to vote for. Okay? Dave?
So say one of those people dies.
They're easily replaceable. Yeah. Yeah. Easily, you could replace them. Now, those votes, let's continue with this, follow this pattern, or follow this path here. They take those 11 votes. They represent Indiana. Those votes are going to end up in the Capitol building. When they go to the Capitol building, all 11 votes went for the Republican Party. They're going to end up in the Capitol, and they're going to be combined with every other state in the Union. And when they get to the Capitol building, there are a total of 538 votes in the entire electoral system. We make up, in the state of Indiana, we make up only 11 of those 538. So, every state goes through the same process. And there is a day, it's usually early in December, which all the votes will end up in the Capitol, and they'll bring them out and they'll actually count them to make sure that they know the election went the way that they projected or that they thought it would. But this is what actually elects the president right here. When they count the votes in December, this is the official count out of the 538 votes that elects the president, not the vote that you cast up here. So somebody tell me, what does this vote do? Daniel.
It elects the electors.
It elects the electors. Okay, what do the electors do? Dave.
They vote for either, for whoever they elect the president.
They are the ones who cast the official vote for the president. There are only 11 votes in the state of Indiana. Whichever electors are chosen by you, the voter, in the general election here. Daniel.
So there's 11 Republicans, 11 Democrats, and if let's say the Democrats get elected, could somebody potentially still vote for the Democratic Party? The Republican Party?
Yes. At the end of our slides today, there is a term. It's called faithless elector. Yes, you're right. That did happen in 2016. So most states have that as an illegal action. You can go to jail for that because it's a violation of election law. And I know in the state of Washington, this happened. I don't remember which side, if it was somebody who was supposed to vote for Clinton voted for Trump, or somebody who was supposed to vote for Trump voted for Clinton. I want to say it was a Democrat voted for Trump is what happened. That person was one of these 11, showed up, and they said, yeah, I can't in good conscience vote the way my party wants me to. I'm going to switch my vote. That really angers a lot of people when you do that because it messes up the system. And it means that they lose faith in that elector, so they're called a faithless elector. Okay? Now, when the Constitution was originally written, and I think I had this in your notes about they cast two votes. So it should be down there at the bottom of your notes here. They cast 2 ballots. They would go around. When they get to the Capitol here, these were the 4 people on the ballot. Okay, there was Trump, Clinton both running for president, Pence and Kaine running for vice president. The way the Constitution was originally written, they would do 2 rounds of voting from these, or no, I'm sorry, they would do 1 ballot. They would do 1 ballot, and they would go through, and since there's 538, they would have, let's say, 271 would go to Trump. Let's say there was 260 votes that went for Clinton, and there were a few electors that decided, I think Pence would actually make a better president than Trump, and they decided to vote for Pence. And so went this way. Now, the way that the Constitution was originally written, they said whoever gets the most amount of electoral votes becomes president. So who becomes president here? The second most becomes vice president. Who would have been vice president in 2016? Clinton. Now, that would be the number 1 TV show on reality TV if somebody would record that. But understand this happened. This happened with our second president. John Adams was the Donald Trump of the day. Thomas Jefferson was the Hillary Clinton of the day. Now, please don't equate any of their politics, but I'm saying the rivalry. Okay, the rivalry between the 2 of them was a lifelong rivalry. In fact, the 2 of them died on the exact same day. And Jefferson hung out just a little bit longer and asked, is Adam still alive before, and they said, no, he died, and so then he was able to let go. Big rivalry between the two of them. Now, they realized this is a potential massive problem. So they changed the way that we're going to do this. And I'm going to pull this up here back on your screen. This is why we need the 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment changed the way that we vote for president in the electoral system. Electors now vote on separate ballots. So they will have one ballot. Let's put that away. Okay. Whoever that belongs to, give it back to them, put it away, so it's not a distraction for me or somebody else that's really needs to know this stuff from Tuesday. So they vote on separate ballots. Now we're going to have one round of voting for president. And in my scenario earlier, the first round of voting would have gone to Donald Trump. The second round of voting, they say, okay, we've already determined who the president is. Now we're going to vote for vice president. So Clinton would not be eligible on the second round, on the second ballot. And so you're going to, it almost guarantees and ensures that you're going to have election of the president and vice president from the same party, with the motivation that now we're going to be able to accomplish more during their time in office than if we had opposing parties together. And it has worked really well since the 12th Amendment was enacted. Yes, ma'am. Kane could have been? Yes. Yes, hypothetically, they could choose a vice president from the opposite party if enough faithless electors decided they were going to do that. Now, most people that are electors, they have a strong voting record in their party. And so if they really have that strong a belief in their party, they're not going to want to do that. But if they lean more toward an independent and have always voted Democrat, but they're more independent, then it could lead them to potentially do that. But to get enough, to get that many people to do that would be unlikely. Theoretically possible, though. Let's talk about this section on nomination. Yes?
So I always thought that they were a pair, and you voted them in at the same time.
Technically, no.
So you vote separately for each of them.
According to the 12th Amendment, the electors vote separately, and you...
Hence, the
But-
president gets to pick,
The president gets to select his vice presidential running mate.
but that doesn't mean that they'll make it.
Right. And when you go to the ballots, there is a separate ballot on your voting machine that will have one for president, one for vice president. So yes, you could, in theory, vote for a Republican president and a Democratic vice president. That is possible because of the 12th Amendment. So this section right here is on nomination. I have covered almost all of this information in the last unit when we talked about political parties. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing through this, but I'm going to anticipate that you remember or know what we talked about, how the president gets nominated, how he goes through caucuses or primaries, how his political party is organized. Some years I don't teach one of these two sections, and so that's why I have it in both, just in case I miss it one or the other. So this section, I'm just going to fly through a couple of things and remind you about the methods here of how the president has the ability to announce his presidency, get on the ballot. We talked about those last time. Conventions, once again, we talked about that in our political parties unit. And so for the sake of what we're doing right now, I'm not going to have you take notes on it, but it's here to help refresh you and remind you of how these are put together. We have just gone through our primary today in class. You guys voted for the person that you want to win that primary. Yes?
I was gone, because I was doing the thing downstairs. Do you want me to, vote it out?
So for those of you that walked in late and did not vote in the primary, you do not need to do that right now, but sometime today, you need to go into Canvas. In our current module, at the bottom of the module, there's some stuff about the election. And it says 2019 primary. There's a link for you to fill out the ballot there. So make sure you do it sometime today. It's going to close later this afternoon, so make sure you vote. Vote once, don't vote many times. So this section here on primary I'm going to skip through as well because of, we've already talked about it, except for this. This is the one thing in here that we did not talk about before that I do want you to see, okay? This has to do with the delegates or the electors that are chosen in the primary or could happen in the general election. So when I go back to the board and I show you our 11 delegates, our 11 electors up here, some states are a winner-take-all. So that means that whoever wins over here, they get all of these. Most states are that way. Okay? But the other option is it could be proportional. So what they would do is look at the percentage of votes in the general election, and let's say that Trump got 60% and Clinton got 40%. So they would split the electors 60-40, or as close as they could to that. So if we had that, what would it be, 6 and 5, something like that? 7 and 4, would that be closer? Either way, I just want you to get the fact that they'll split it proportionally. So that means 6 Republican and 5 Democrat would still get to cast their elector vote. That's only in a state that does proportional. 2 states. 2 states do proportional vote on the electoral. Nebraska and Maine. Nebraska and Maine are the only 2 that will do this on the national election. Now, I need you to understand, and back up just a moment, more states do this in the primaries than in the general election. So this hurt a couple of candidates in 2016 who were running against Donald Trump in the primary. I remember Ted Cruz was one of them. He was projected to win one of the major states. I can't remember which one it was, if it was Ohio or Pennsylvania or who it was. And he did not do as well as he had thought. And it was divided proportionally. And I think it was divided among 4 candidates. And so they took those, what should have been a huge support for Ted Cruz, and actually Trump ended up taking away some from him. I think Huckabee or Kasich or somebody else was in there, took away some of the support. And so it's actually divided up some of Ted Cruz's support from that state. So that's the difference between winner-take-all and proportional. On occasion, you may see that from individual states. Aaron, go ahead and turn the lights again, please. Again, National Convention, we've talked through a lot of these goals. They want to nominate a candidate, unify the party, adopt a party platform. I'm not concerned that you know the schedule here. And this is the same video we watched last time. We're not going to do that today. When looking at a president and who you want to select to represent your party, these are some factors that often do come into play. We've not talked about this section yet, so I would recommend that you do add some notes on this section. What does that term incumbent mean? Who is the incumbent right now for the presidency? Donald Trump. Incumbent is a government term that means the current office holder who is running for re-election. He has a huge advantage. Because of the fact that people already know him, he has lots of resources. They what? Okay, he gets a lot of attention and exposure. Well, yeah, it could be bad. It could be. But what do people know about any challenger that is wanting to take his nomination away? What other Republicans are currently running for the nomination for the party? Avery? Weldon Welsh? What do you know about him? Okay. Now, you might have heard of him. but he's not getting near the media attention Donald Trump is. So when people come out and vote in November or in a primary in April, they don't know who the other guy is. Doesn't matter, good, bad, or otherwise. So the incumbent always has an advantage. Secondly, you're going to look for somebody that has political experience. I realize Donald Trump's the exception to that. And he prided himself on the fact that he had no political experience, and that's fine. Generally speaking, political parties are going to want to find somebody that does have some experience there. But even though he didn't have the political experience, he had a lot of business experience that proved to be helpful in his presidency. A few other helpful characteristics as we look at our past presidents. We have yet to have a female. I think that day is coming, and I think that it is probably overdue. However, I would never vote for a female who is just because they're a female. I would vote for a female if they're the best qualified, just like I'd vote for a male if he's best qualified. And I think you need to adopt that same mindset, at least I hope you will. Vote for the most qualified person. I don't care who they are, what they look like. Vote for the most qualified. But traditionally, people who are Protestants tend to make up a majority of our presidents. If you come from a large state, Virginia has had the most presidents. Most of the states, the majority of presidents have come from larger states. We'll just leave it at that. While your appearance should not make an impact on voters, it often does. So they want somebody who looks presidential. In fact, that's part of the reason why there were a couple of individuals who, I think it was James Buchanan, was elected because people thought he looked like a president. And he turns out to be one of the worst presidents ever. Strong family appearance is also important. Whether or not you in reality have a strong family, making it seem as though you have it all together as the American dream family is an important image aspect. And then charisma. Now again, this is not a definite factor, but it helps if you are able to wheel and deal a little bit to be able to get people to pay attention to you, get people to follow what you're doing. We are going to